not doing it. They're not doing things the legal way, and you're acknowledging
He
that.
should pick up a book and learn how it works. He's the president of the United States.
Supremacy is no longer a major issue affecting the black community in America today. We have a country now that is probably one of the best countries on the planet to be a black person. We also have organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. They're obsolete. They no longer have serious membership. They are not to be taken seriously. We have one of the best countries on the planet to be a black person. And there's more opportunities in America for African Americans than any other country right now on the planet for black people. And that's why they continue to move here from Africa. That's why the black population continues to rise. And the biggest issue affecting the black community in America today is their own culture and not white supremacy.
Unfortunately, I think we probably are going to have a lot of overlap here, I think, in terms of what we agree on. I'm not going to sit here and say that America's a horrible place to live in if you're a minority or whatever. I think that's a little silly sometimes. I would argue that there are a lot of, if you're arguing there are cultural issues, it's not necessarily wrong, but I would say you could probably trace a lot of that back to like actual racist stuff in the United States that was kind of in the past. So like, for instance, like adversarial relationships with cops based on where you live, things like redlining, like policies of lending money or not to people based on race, like stuff like that, I think can filter down to how communities today express themselves. So like it's stuff that needs to be addressed, but I don't know if I would say we're like a white supremacist country. That's not like a position that I personally have.
Wait, so do you believe that over-policing is an issue in the black community?
Maybe a little bit, but I think it's largely overblown. I think it's largely overblown. I'm not going to have, we're probably not super far apart. I don't have like an ultra-progressive stance, I think, when it comes to like white supremacy or anything like that.
And when you were speaking of like major issues, adversarial relationships with the police, do you think that there are negative things within black culture? So what? Oh yeah, do you think that there are negative things within black culture that are affecting that relationship? For example, this constant projection of how people tell people to interact with the police that is completely counterintuitive to how a logical person would interact with the police. Things like never speak to the police, no snitching, all of those things allow more crime in your community and they do not build up your community.
Yeah, I think those things can definitely be negative. I think most of that advice is pretty cringe. I would say on the conservative side, there's a lot of cringe stuff when it comes to how they view like our intelligence agencies and stuff like that. I think everybody kind of plays into their own political stereotypes when they're giving advice on how to deal with different agencies. I think a lot of the advice given about like if you get pulled over by a cop, you're going to get killed or whatever, I think is kind of stupid, yeah.
So you would say that like police brutality is not a major issue affecting black people in America?
Nowhere near as much as I think people would say it is, yeah. Well, but that's But I would also say, like, I guess, like on the flip side, I would say things like illegal immigration are massively overhyped on the conservative side, or things like transports are massively overhyped on the conservative side, such that they will try to make these like singular focal points for elections, and then as soon as they're elected, they don't really do anything substantive to address, I think, a lot of the major issues related to it. I kind of gave two topics there, but
would you say that abortion is overhyped on the conservative side?
I think abortion is a hard one because I think people can come down on a very strong moral stance on that. Like, if you think it's legitimately killing kids, then that's a pretty rough one.
Wait, so it's not legitimately killing kids?
Well, I wouldn't say so, obviously, but because if I did, I'd probably be anti-abortion completely, yeah.
So, explain to me how it's not.
For an abortion position, I would say that the experience that we're trying to protect is the kind of the conscious experience that we have as humans, and that if that hasn't emerged yet, or it's not like a thing, you're not really killing a person to speak of, just a thing that has to develop the capacity for that, I guess, like human sentience yet.
So wait, are we arguing that they are not a person, or are we arguing that they're not human?
I guess not a person. Human is kind of whatever, like, is a finger human? It kind of is, but,
Is a baby human?
A baby? I would say, yeah, probably, yeah.
So killing a baby would be killing a human?
Probably, yeah, but baby is generally defined as, yeah, things that are born from the ages of 0 to 1 or 2, I guess, yeah.
Okay, so at what point do you think a person is a baby, or a baby becomes a person, I guess?
I think it depends on what you read, but anywhere from like 16 to 24 weeks when you have like all of the brain parts in place to begin to deploy like a conscious experience. So like that thing that where we can say what it's like to be, I think at that point, I think there's probably an experience that worth protecting. So sometime like in the second trimester, I guess.
Right, but a baby doesn't know what it's like to be. What's your earliest memory? I can promise you it's not 20 weeks gestation.
No, but I think we can say pretty safely that babies probably know what it's like to experience things. It seems like they have all the parts in place to experience things. Wait, wherever the mixer guys, can we turn the game down just like a smidgen on both so it stops doing that weird feedback thing? Sorry, go ahead.
So you would say you're pro-life at 20 weeks or 16 weeks?
I guess, but I mean, most people probably say it's pro-choice for the first or part of the second trimester.
But would you say that it's wrong for someone to abort a 16-week
Once you got all the parts in
baby
place, yeah, so like 24 weeks probably for sure.
for convenience, for abortion?
For any reason.
For any reason, you would say it's wrong?
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess our disagreement's going to come with, I believe that it's wrong to abort a baby at any age, at any period of gestation, because I believe that we have a moral obligation to protect human life under almost all circumstances. I think once someone starts taking other people's human life, then their human life is no longer worthy of protecting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I just think it comes down to when you define, I guess, like the start of a human life and the end of a human life.
All right, so I'm going to ask probably a dumb question. Do you think there's something we would disagree on more so we can actually debate?
I mean, I think the first, however long we are into this Trump term, I think he's been a disaster in almost every conceivable way. You can point to like Russia, Ukraine, he's been a disaster there. The whole tariff trade scheme has been disastrous, I think.
So let's go to the principle of a tariff. Do you believe that a reciprocal tariff is a good idea or a bad idea?
I think it can be a good idea, but none of the tariffs we did were reciprocal. They were calculated entirely arbitrarily, so we can't start the conversation, I think.
So you think that they should have been reciprocal?
I mean, to say reciprocal tariff is a bit
So do you think that we should be paying, that other countries should be paying us what we pay them?
Probably about that, yeah.
So you think that's fair?
Generally speaking,
So
yeah.
generally speaking, you are pro-tariff?
I wouldn't say tariff. Like generally the way that these things appear aren't just going to be like a straight tariff. It might be like a government subsidizes some local industry, or they have some other competitive advantage that they get through some government actions or some non-competitive things. It's not usually like a straight tariff, you know? But like those are things to take down those. You have to do these as part of like complicated and sophisticated trade deals like we had with Mexico and Canada, but apparently Trump wasn't happy with those trade deals, so now we blew it all up for just flat tariffs, which I don't think are, like you can overcome a tariff with government subsidy you really want, and that doesn't even ensure fairness there, so.
Okay, I actually just thought of something I'm pretty sure we're going to do here. I think that it was good that Trump brought a tax cut to people making over $600,000 a year because of the high percentage in taxes people that earn that dollar amount pay. And I think our tax system currently in the United States is unfair. I think if someone making $15,000 a year pays a 10% tax, then someone making $1 million a year should pay a 10% tax. That's a fair tax across the board. What do you say?
Well, I feel like the 10% of the money on the person making $15,000 a year is going to meaningfully and dramatically impact his life. The 10% of a person making $1 million a year, you might not even notice it. So I think that there's a big difference there. The reason why we have a progressive tax system is because people that are making out of a certain boundary of money, consumption doesn't usually scale one-to-one. Like a guy making $1 million doesn't consume 100 times more than a guy making $10,000. So even if you have the same percentage tax, the person got
Yes, they do.
What?
Yes, they do.
I don't think so.
Okay, how many people do you know that make $10,000 a year that are hiring a person to clean their house, a person to detail their car, a person to do their lawn care, a person to do their service their air conditioning? If they have multiple cars, you see, when I was making $9,000 a year, I wasn't consuming very much. When I made my first $1 million, I was consuming a lot, and I was employing a lot of other people. And my effect on society changed dramatically to the point where if you have half a dozen people that rely on you for their wages, it's going to change drastically. It's going to change drastically how you affect society. Somebody that has 5, 6, 7, 8 families eating off of that salary, because of they're able to make that much money, it's monumentally better for society for them to have more of their money. Because fundamentally, taxes are the government taking your money. It's better when the government takes less of your money. Would you agree?
Not necessarily, but
Why
also
not necessarily?
Well, first, just on the consumption.
What does the government do better than the private sector?
We have to.
Final
Really?
statements.
Wait, is somebody scheduled here?
I think so. You want to go?
Yeah, it's like 4 minutes. Yeah, 4 minutes.
Okay.
With the okay, I I think the issue is that, like, if you are incredibly wealthy, if you want to hire people, that's not taxable income anyway, right? I mean, that's going to be a write-off, whether you have a flow through, whether you have a...
No, you're going to pay payroll taxes on those people you hire.
You'll pay, I guess, their half of the payroll taxes, but none of the Trump tax cuts are reducing FICA anyway, so it's not
Right, which is good.
Well,
I believe that people should be able to retain as much of the money that they earn as possible. And then just because you make more money, it's not fair for you to have to give more of it to the government.
It's a fundamentally different question on whether or not taxes are bad, which is what it sounds like you're arguing, versus are progressive tax brackets more fair than just flat tax brackets?
No.
Okay, well, they're two different questions, right? I think a progressive tax bracket is more fair. Do you agree that it would hurt somebody making $50,000 a year, losing $5,000, that's going to hurt them more than a person who makes $1 million a year, losing $100,000?
Somebody
makes $50,000 a year and you tax 10% of their income flat. You take $5,000 from somebody who's making $50,000 a year versus somebody making $1 million a year. If you take $100,000 from them, 10%, like one of these parties is probably going to be impacted a lot more, right?
No, because my observation has been, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, but I've helped a lot of people in my life, and what I've learned is giving someone more money who is bad with money does not change their situation. If someone is homeless, most of the time they're homeless for a reason. And if you just handed them $100,000, they would be homeless again.
Wasn't this an argument against tax cuts then? Shouldn't the government just be taking it, spending it for them? They can't spend it anyway?
No, because that's not their money. The government has an obligation to provide some services, like obviously like roads and stuff, but a perfect example would be everything that I know that the government runs terribly. If you get in line at the DMV, and you get in line at Chick-fil-A in the private sector, do you get your driver's license or your sandwich faster?
Well, one is a driver's license requiring a database of identities that are verified in order to be compliant with so much regulation.
But they could have
just fast food.
No, they have no incentive to be excellent in service because they know you're going to use the service anyway.
Well, yeah, but you could vote out people or vote people in based on their ability to deliver basic social services.
You can't vote people out of the DMV.
You absolutely can affect.
How do you vote somebody out of the DMV? Do you know how hard it is to fire a government employee?
Really? Well, if you vote somebody in differently, it's pretty easy. It's called an election.
Have you ever been in line at the post office and seen how unmotivated and lackadaisical the employees are versus in line at Chick-fil-A where they're like right on it?
Compare like to like. Like I've been in line at the post office and I've seen tons of videos of FedEx and UPS drivers that are destroying packages. They throw them.
Okay, destroying packages, but nobody ever accused UPS of being slow.
Well, it really depends on what you're shipping. I mean, the post office is not slow, right? You mail
every government.
It takes them 2 days.
If I could find a government office that is currently being operated efficiently and well, I mean,
the problem is you have to compare like to like, right? The DMV is a place where you go for services that have to be rendered in a particular way.
Actually, I take back part of my statement. Here in Florida, we have for-profit DMVs. And the for-profit DMVs that you go to get paperwork done, they are fast because they have an incentive to be, because the more customers they serve, the more money they make, obviously. So I think, but then again, that would go back to what I was saying about something in the private sector being done better than the government. I think the government would be way better off if they subbed out things to the private sector at a higher rate, because when there is a profit motive and a profit incentive, things are done better.
I mean, things aren't done better. Things are just done to make more money, right?
No, things are done better.
It doesn't have to be better. If you find a way to cheat, or if you find a loophole, or if you find some way to make more money that doesn't improve your actual customer service experience, but just makes you more money, then people could do like that, no? If I had 100 people that come into my office and I find a way to 2x the cost, and I lose like 40% of my customers, that's a win for me. I would do that as a profit-seeking entity, but I'd be serving less people.
But the government has no incentive to be better on either of those.
The government does. It's called elections. We elect our officials. If they mess up too much, then they get voted out.
But we don't elect government processes like the wait times at the DMV.
Nobody's ever voted for a politician based on wait times at courthouses, or wait times at DMVs, or wait times at...
And did they change anything?
I'm sure in some local districts they are. I don't know every local district in the United States, but where do you think these people are hired from? Do you think they just like pick names out of a hat?
A lot of people don't even vote in most elections. People don't even know who their judge is for their district. They don't know who anyone. People just look at the presidential election, and then sometimes like they know who their state rep is, but unfortunately people are not involved enough in politics.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that there's an issue with like local politics is not very sexy. The national level stuff is like way more attractive. People like to pay attention
but
to that.
But it affects you a lot. It affects you a lot more.
So I think there should be like more of a push for kind of like local involvement and everything. I agree with that.
I would agree with that as well.
Yeah.
But do you think that the government needs to take over more services and the government needs to be running more things than they're currently running, or do you think more things should go to the private? Because I personally, I would go to a 10% sales tax, get rid of all other taxes, and make every road a toll road. Because no one's avoiding. If you have people dealing drugs in your community, they're not paying income tax, but they're going to pay that toll if they have a license plate. You know, and they're going to pay sales tax when they go buy something from the corner store. So I think that the system that we have set up for taxation is disastrous, and I think the percentage of what they're taking.
What other country on the planet has a system like that?
What do you mean?
Where they only do like sales tax and no income tax or whatever.
Well, they don't, but they should. I'm saying it would
As
be
for
better.
who? How would we even know that? It sounds like it would be worse if literally not a single other country's doing it, no?
Oh, because it would be sales tax would be an unavoidable tax. Everyone would pay it, even people doing illegal activities.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that maybe there are reasons why, like no other country on the planet employs that type of tax.
Oh, because they're collecting too much in income tax.
Do you think that every single service the government offers, like a private company could offer just as well? Like could administer like Social Security or...
Well, Social Security is a disaster in and of itself, but every single. How is it a disaster? We've got more people taking out of it than are paying into it.
Social Security is reliably paid out like since its inception, and it's done so like. I mean, like what
is Social Security is Social Security actually providing people with actual money they can live on? Who lives on $3,500 a month at 65 if they have a family?
First of all, if you're taking care of a family at 65. With just your Social Security check, there's a lot of things that's going wrong at that point. But Social Security is not supposed to be just for Social Security is not supposed to be just for sustaining somebody with no other income for the rest of their entire life. But like, if you're getting $3,400 a month, that's enough to live on. At least you're not like out on the street because you're only able to save for retirement.
Right, but if the government didn't take the money from you in the first place, then you could save for your own retirement.
You really think most people would do that?
I think the government could very easily, well, this is probably not a good argument for small government. The government could very easily take the money they would have spent on your Social Security and invest it for you at birth. They do put $10,000 into the market, and then at 65, they give you back the money that you earned from the interest. That would be a better system than the Social Security system we currently have.
All right, final statements, go.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree. I think that I don't think you want that money invested because the investment strategy that you're going to utilize is going to change throughout your life. You want to be involved in risky investments when you're approaching retirement. You kind of want to. Social Security seems to work pretty well for what it does right now. Like it's incredibly popular. Most old people defend it to their death. Even public still invest in it. And I don't think it's fair to compare like private industry to government when they offer like fundamentally different services, and then to say the government's inefficient when the private sector is.
What's a private sector industry that the government? What's a government? What's a government entity that the private sector could not offer?
I mean, I would say like deployment of military. It's kind of
I would agree with you.
yeah.
The military, but the military is heavily privatized. There's a lot of private companies that provide
technology for it.
provide weapons and equipment and stuff to the military.
You make me wrestle the mic out of your hands. All right.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Don't forget to take off your mic. Everyone clap. Yes. Thank you. Awesome.
Yesterday, first of all, that's a lot of things. So my claim is this: the left's rejection
Of objective morality, absolute. Guys, okay, first of all, can y'all hear me? Is that good? All right, so my claim is as follows. The left's rejection of objective morality, absolute truth, and the nuclear family is exactly why they lost in 2024. You cannot lead a nation if you can't define what's right, what's real, or what a family is. That's my claim.
Which one do you want to start with?
I'm going to give you the four, whichever one you want to attack first.
The family one seems strange if the conservative movement was supporting a guy who is very non-traditional with his family, which is Donald Trump, and then his second in command for a while was Elon Musk, who is incredibly non-traditional with his family, so it seems like that's not a huge value for conservatives, or do you think he reinforces founding values despite not living any of them himself?
So Donald Trump has a unique past. However, that doesn't escape or negate the fact that conservative values as a whole have always typically advocated for a strong nuclear family, and in fact, when African Americans, to be specific, were actually more Republican as far back as the 1960s prior to the switch that we did, the black family was at its strongest when we happened to be voting Republican more than at any point in American history. Donald Trump, though his past is very unique, his conservative values that he talks about promote the nuclear family, which is a traditional family.
Which conservative values does Donald Trump talk about that promote the nuclear family?
Well, how about this? How about the fact that he wants to start a Trump savings account for people that have children, up to $5,000? Let's start there. Or the fact that Elon Musk. Well, you made a
family, right?
I'm sorry.
Children, you can have children out of wedlock, right?
You
That doesn't have
can.
to do necessarily with a nuclear family.
Well, you can, but what happens is when cultures have children out of wedlock en masse within the confines of the United States, those children typically suffer more, especially when fathers are not with their children in the house. There have been a multiplicity of studies conducted where when children grow up without a father in the home, those children have higher instances of...
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with any of that. I think it's good to have two parents in the home. I don't think that, it doesn't seem like Trump supports that very much. Like, what felt like Biden during the COVID stimulus time, we had that extension of the child tax credit to like $6,000, but then that disappeared under the Trump admin and they brought it back, so I just don't see where Trump is supporting.
Well, he just brought back like I said, he brought back the Trump savings account, but that doesn't refute my point. The fact that Trump doesn't...
policy yet, right?
I'm sorry?
I don't think that's policy.
It's not. It's being worked on, but that's not the point. The point that I'm making is if Trump advocates for it, you don't necessarily... No perfect politician. There is no perfect politician. You're not going to find any politician that 100% lives out every single ideal to the fullest.
Yeah, but Trump doesn't know about any of them. The guy doesn't know the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Doesn't that bother you?
Did you say that part about the Old
Trump doesn't know the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. He doesn't have a favorite book. You couldn't name a single Bible verse, not even John 3:16. That doesn't bother you?
He did name John 3:16. He's quoted that plenty of times. And one thing that we do have with Trump that we haven't seen...
Hold on. You admit that he only brought that up after he got asked?
No, I don't admit that. Trump has referenced God multiplicity of times on several other podcasts, Destiny. You can't make that claim.
Okay,
Trump has stated the fact that God saved his life.
We're not going to talk about the defense of absolute truth, but we can't even agree on like what truthful events are. Donald Trump was asked in 2016, do you have a favorite book of the Bible? Do you have a favorite Old Testament?
There was a point.
Any of it.
I will grant you that there was a point where Trump even stated that he was not a Christian. So there was a point where Trump claimed he was not a Christian. Now, after his assassination attempt in Butler, he made an amazing statement where he claimed that God saved his life, and he quoted this in the inauguration. So it's very possible, if he didn't believe at one point to a full degree, that his opinion could have changed on God. And that's what we're seeing. We have seen Trump now, at this moment, host prayers to open his cabinet meetings, which he did not do at all when he was first elected in 2016. So what we're actually seeing is a religious and a spiritual evolution of Donald Trump that we didn't see before.
How would you tell the difference between a religious and spiritual evolution, like genuinely, versus him just trying to pander to religious votes?
Well, what is he? Well, the problem is there's no need for him to pander still. He's already been elected. He's already secured the vote. So if he's still leading after becoming the president of the United States, if he is still opening his cabinet meetings to this day with prayer, that would indicate to me a genuine change of faith, not political pandering for voting poll points because he doesn't need them anymore.
About what happens in the midterms, about having a strong Congress that supports policy.
That's not my point. We're speaking of one man's individual faith. Trump has already secured...
How do you differentiate between him, because I view it as an obvious pander, but you view it obviously as a genuine change of faith. How would we tell the two?
Well, Destiny, here's how we tell it, because his tone about God changed rapidly after going back to the Butler, Pennsylvania incident, which, by the way, that's the only interview, or that's the only rally that CNN decided to cover for obvious reasons. Well, I've never wondered about that. They covered the one interview where an assassin's bullet is about to take Trump out. After that event, he then changes the narrative that he has on God. Now, about the midterms, that's a completely different argument. We're speaking of one man's individual faith. Now you're trying to say that he's trying to pander to secure his base, when we know that one of the primary reasons, to be honest, that the Republicans are in danger in the midterms is because of his failure to release the Epstein files. But that has nothing to do with Trump when we're speaking about his faith from an individual perspective. You can't use that.
Sure, I'm not using the Epstein files. I just think that it's obviously pandering. I think trying to say that Trump's life was saved by God is a really weird way of throwing that firefighter under the bus.
Why is that a weird way?
That God guided the bullet into the firefighter?
The odds, the mathematical odds. Have you ever fired an AR-15?
Yeah.
So you fired a 5.56. The mathematical odds of him surviving that are infinitesimally small.
They're infinitesimally high if it misses him. Or grazes his ear.
If he doesn't turn, what you're failing to acknowledge is that if he does not turn his head to the exact degree that he needs to have the bullet strike his ear versus his temple, there's no reason for him to say, take a look at what happened, and if his head is even 1/2 of an inch in the opposite direction, Donald Trump is dead, Kamala Harris could very well win the election, and we'd be having a completely different conversation. So it's impossible
that's reality, right? Like, things could always go a different way. That doesn't prove anything one way or another, right?
Well, what we have is circumstantial evidence, Destiny. It doesn't necessarily prove it outright, but it definitely proves that something at the minimum, very, very odd and non-coincidentally happened. We've never seen
planes with really bad turbulence before. It doesn't mean that God guided us to the landing.
turbulence and an assassin's bullet are two completely different things. There's no way that you can compare the two. Turbulence and the bullet of an assassin are completely different things. We knew where the sniper was on the roof. The Secret Service, for whatever reason, was aware where the sniper was, failed to take action until someone's life was already taken. So I suppose that was it a random act of violence that someone's life was taken, or what's your response to that? Because someone else did die that day also.
Yeah, I think there was an assassin. He tried to kill Trump. He sucked. He shot. He missed. Then somebody else died instead. I mean, that's as simple as that, no?
So, no, he doesn't hate firefighters. So you're telling me that there's you leave absolutely no possibility, none at all, that a supernatural act at minimum or something very divine at best could have occurred to save Trump's life. And then we've also gotten away from our original point, which is, again, that the left's failure to acknowledge objective morality, their failure to care about the nuclear family, or for that matter, even define what the hell gender is one of the primary reasons they lost the election. Trump gained more with younger voters than any previous Republican president in the past 2 elections. How do you account for that?
I mean, there's a lot of different reasons you can account for that, but I don't think young men are supporting the nuclear family. They're probably supporting because he's epic in base.
I don't know, because people
lives on Twitter and stuff. Like, I think that's more to do with, because again, what does Trump do to support the nuclear family? Aside from
well, once again, you have the child care tax credit that he's looking to extend. You have the Trump savings account that he's looking to create.
So the Trump tax credit is much smaller than Biden's, right? Yes.
The Trump tax credit is smaller than Biden's?
Significantly smaller than the Biden child tax credit. It was like $6,000 I think for a single child. It's insane.
Okay.
So that tax credit is smaller. The Trump savings account, that's never going to materialize. That won't
How
happen.
can you say that? He's still in office. There's an opportunity for that. If he's able to sell citizenship for $5 million, the idea that a Trump savings account couldn't be created is that's not that far of a stretch, Destiny. You have to give Trump a little bit more credit.
I mean, the State Department issuing citizenship is the thing that the president's powers are, like decently well.
He's going to have
this thing, but creating savings accounts for kids, I don't know if the president has the authority to do that.
No, he would have to go to Congress to get it approved, but then again, that's what he intends to do, while he does have a small majority in the House and the Senate. So the idea that this is something that could not be done is a very, very small stretch. But once again, the core point, which has not been addressed, is that the left cannot even define what gender is. They couldn't define it. They propped up a candidate that was unable to, one, be authentic to who she was, be authentic to her accent. She would switch it up whenever she campaigned, saying, you better thank a union member for this, you better thank a union member for that. And I was cooking collard greens in the bathtub when I was in college, but couldn't give you an actual economic plan. Couldn't give you one, by any stretch of the imagination. That failure and the ability to switch up narratives based upon what state you're in is exactly why her inauthenticity led to her defeat in November.
So I don't think she was inauthentic. I think she was pretty on message most of the time. If you're going to talk about the strength of the economic plans, Trump's economic plan was literally one word, which was tariffs, which have been an absolute failure.
There was more than tariffs. The Big Beautiful Bill has a lot more than tariffs. I got to tell you.
Sorry,
the Big Beautiful Bill's got a lot more than tariffs.
Tax cuts. How's it dealing with the deficit?
Well, it added $3.2 trillion to deficit. That I'm not a fan of. However, it extended.
Why do we care that we were able to help the economy by massive deficit spending? This is always the criticism.
The problem with Destiny, the problem with you wanting to reference deficit spending is this. That cuts at a deeper issue that Trump is now trying to address by replacing the Federal Reserve chair. What we're not going to do, what I can't do in this debate.
The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with our deficit.
The Federal Reserve absolutely does. The Federal Reserve loans every dollar that we have to us with an immediate debt attached to it. And that has been the case. That has been the case since 1933, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt stole what little wealth Americans had with an illegal executive order that forced American citizens to turn in all gold bullion to the Treasury at the rate of $20 an ounce. Since 1933, the United States has operated under a debt-based fiat currency just like the rest of the world. Trump has done the best that any president can, because his powers are tied, to limit the power of the Fed to deal with quantitative easing, which is exactly why he's now calling for the current Fed chair to be removed. So before we talk about deficit spending or the fact that we have a multi-trillion-dollar deficit, what we would need to address is the real issue, which is the existence of the Federal Reserve.
First of all, do you think that Donald Trump wants to replace the chair of the Federal Reserve for a more conservative policy? That's the opposite of what he wants to do. He wants to have more QE. He wants to have lower interest rates. He wants to increase the velocity of money as much as possible. So he's completely in the opposite direction. Number one. Number two, if you're talking about your debt and your deficit, that's the difference between what Congress spends versus what Congress takes in. The Federal Reserve has nothing to do with that.
It absolutely does.
It absolutely does not. You don't
Since
spend
1933.
I don't care about 1933. We're talking about 2000.
Let's talk about the fact.
Was spending cuts, and because he
he didn't pare spending? Because he increased the debt and he increased the deficit absolutely for no reason. Because he came when the economy's doing well. Just like right now, he came when the economy's doing well.
Every president,
economic contraction.
every president since the Federal Reserve came into existence has increased the deficit. If you look at the money supply prior to, listen, if you
ran a budget surplus.
Destiny, if you a budget surplus is not a deficit reduction.
Yes,
the fact
it
that
definitionally is.
The fact of the matter is, if you look at all right, if that's the case, then answer this question. $1 in 1913 required $21.60 in 2007, for example, to match value. There is a positive correlation between the amount of money that exists in our money supply and the amount of debt there is. That has been the case since the Federal Reserve has come into existence. So if you make that argument about that budget surplus that Clinton had, what was the national debt during Clinton, when Clinton exited? Somebody fact check that. Look at the national debt. Challenge me, because we love talking about that budget surplus nonsense. Look at the national debt when Bill Clinton was president. You will discover that we were not in the positive by any stretch of the imagination. Donald Trump's attempt, what Donald Trump has done, hold on, what Donald Trump has done, because the only thing that you can do when you're dealing with the Federal Reserve is lower the rate of inflation. When Donald Trump left, inflation was holding at a rate of 1.96%. Right now, as of February of this year, inflation is still holding lower than it was when Joe Biden left office. That is irrefutable. So if you want to talk about the Fed and the deficit spending, fine. You have to first address the real enemy and the real snake which continues to rob the American people of its wealth, which is the Federal Reserve. Period, point blank in the story. And again, just to close this last
Hold on, so just to be clear, you think that, walk me through, how does the Federal Reserve influence the budget from Congress?
I didn't say, see, you keep talking about the budget. I'm talking about the money supply itself.
The debt increases.
Here's how. Because the Federal Reserve, when the government wants to create money, they go
Why does the government need to create money?
because we exist in a fiat currency. Because once again, our wealth was stolen.
Because Congress is spending more money than they're taking in. That's called running a deficit. Donald Trump comes in and he spends more money than he takes in, which he was doing at historic levels even before COVID, right? Because he did a huge tax cut without pairing it with a spending cut, because Republicans love to talk one thing and do another thing. He did that. He increased the debt a monumental amount. He had those tax cuts carried through Biden's element, where that also increased his deficits and the debt a monumental amount. And now he's made those tax cuts permanent again without pairing.
So what I would ask you to do,
anything to do with the Federal Reserve.
what I would ask all of you to do right now, fact check me on this. Look at the document published by the Federal Reserve called Modern Money Mechanics. It was published in 2008. And what that document does is it breaks down the monetary creation process in the United States. When our government wants to create money, they go to the Fed and they issue the Fed Treasury bonds, which are instruments of debt.
Do you need Treasury bonds for?
To create.
You need Treasury
Look at
bonds to
somebody
pay
pull
for
it
your
up.
deficit. The reason why the government issues bonds.
If you look at going back to my original point, Destiny, that I'm not going to let you run from. Prior to 1933, if you look at a dollar bill, it says it is redeemable in gold. If anybody in this room right now pulls out a dollar bill, that bill will say it is legal tender, which means that it is backed by absolutely nothing. The only thing that who cares? Who cares? The fact I care.
1933 to today.
Destiny, as an American,
lived better lives in 1933 than they do today.
Their money was worth more back then, Destiny. That's the point. Every president from Trump all the way down to FDR and everyone else. The minute that FDR took our gold from us in 1933, the United States dollar has been, to be quite honest, I know it's been shit. There is a reason.
Do you think that standard of living was better then or now?
Well, if your money, let me see, Destiny, if your money bought more back then, don't you think you would have a better standard of living?
What did it buy? Did it buy them cell phones? Did it buy them internet access? Did it buy them?
We didn't have internet.
Did it buy them? Yeah, exactly. We didn't have any of that. So why is it that every single country in the world has somehow decided to move to a fiat currency system?
You know why?
Nobody uses a gold standard back system anywhere.
You know why? You know why? You know why? Because when big bankers come in and they gain through central banks, which is what the Federal Reserve is. Let me ask you this: before we even continue, is the Federal Reserve a public or a private institution? It's about as federal expense. That's rhetorical.
It's a private institution with a federally nominated head.
Right. But who does it answer to? It answers to the member banks. The fact of the matter is this, and this has been the case once again since FDR took our gold from us in 1933. The fact that I just told you that $1 in 1913 required $21.60 to match value, which means that the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power since the Federal Reserve came into existence. That is an instrument of debt. The United States is controlled by its system of debt until the Federal Reserve is restructured, at minimum brought under the Department of the Treasury, which constitutionally, that's supposed to be Congress's power to coin and print money anyway, which speaks to the fact that the Federal Reserve bankers and the bankers have more control over our system than the American people are supposed to.
What system would you look to emulate? Why does nobody else on the planet utilize this amazing gold-backed gold standard backed currency?
Because central bankers,
not the United States.
because
Every
central
other
bankers
country.
don't, because central bankers don't allow. When Abraham
Wait, so
Lincoln,
central
when
bankers
Abraham
came in and
Lincoln,
they took
Destiny,
over all of the
Destiny,
banks on all the governments
Destiny.
all over the world.
There are three presidents I'm going to give you. There are three presidents. Let's start with Abraham Lincoln. When Abraham Lincoln rejected the offer by Europe to have a central bank established in the United States and it began to issue greenbacks, he was killed shortly after that. When Andrew Jackson rejected the offer to have a central bank established in the United States, he was nearly assassinated twice. When John F. Kennedy, with Executive Order number 11110, passed in 1963, when he began the process, which was a direct order by the president to issue silver bullion certificates, that he was taken out right after that. The fact of the matter is, there are forces within our government that have been in existence since Woodrow
I'm talking
Wilson.
about our government. I'm not talking about the rest of the world.
The rest
no
of the world.
country has decided. Why didn't the Soviets or China or any of our enemies? Why don't they move to a gold standard backed currency?
Well, let's see. Because they exist, they have a fiat currency. That's
Yeah,
what.
why don't they use it? It's so much better.
Because it's easier to create instruments of debt where you can create money and create it out of thin air without it having to be backed by anything of
Maybe that's
substance.
a better way
It
to
is.
run it. Well, it is backed by something of substance, backed by the strength of the ability to pay back in the future, right?
Okay, so where does the money come from? Where does the money to pay for the debt we already have?
It comes
Where's
from the future activity of the U.S. economy.
future activity, which requires more what? More printing. So what we have
Do
are
we not have real things that we make in the United States?
destiny.
Do we not make cars and spaceships and do we not
The instrument,
manufacture goods and services? Do we not have AI?
the instrument through which.
I understand you're repeating the same thing over and over again.
Well, because it's obviously going over your head, so I have to keep trying to
Going
repeat
over my
it.
head.
The
You're
fact of
not
the
able
matter
to
is,
engage with anything I'm saying. I'm asking you, why did no other countries on the planet utilize this clearly superior system of
it's not a
money?
superior system. It's nothing more than an instrument of debt. Have you ever read the book Confession of an Economic Hitman?
No.
It is well documented that central bankers, going all the way back to the time of Woodrow Wilson, again, we're referencing the United States because that's the country that we live in. I don't know about you, but I care more about what goes on in this country than what goes on,
So do you think we have a more stable economy back when we had like a Great Depression than we have had in 100 years going forward?
You're referencing the exact thing that I'm trying to lead you to. What was the reason that FDR took America's gold? It was under the guise of attempting to end the Depression. You had to
When
suffer.
was our economy
you
more
would-
stable? Was it pre or post fiat currency?
It was definitely pre-fiat currency.
By what metric? How would you say that in an era where we're having
All you
like
have to
Great
listen,
Depressions?
look at the purchasing power
Who
of the
cares
dollar.
about the purchasing power of the dollar?
I don't know about you, but listen, question. How long have prices been increasing in the United States? Because under Biden, I don't know, prices got a lot worse under Biden. They got a lot worse under
But
Biden.
we
It was
earn more
terrible.
money now
It
too,
was terrible.
right? But we earn more money now too, yes?
Earning more money, if the value of the money you're earning is still less than what it was just a couple of years ago, that speaks to the fact that the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power, and it continues to get worse for my children, my son's generation, and the generations following him will have less money to spend on housing, less money to spend on food than we have now. Why? Because our government continues to allow the Fed to print money at a ridiculous rate, which is exactly
You
why.
have absolutely nothing to back it up with besides saying the same thing over and over.
I gave you sources. I would encourage you.
I'm asking for the first reason is why does nobody else use a gold standard? You haven't answered that.
I did because other countries in the world have en masse adopted the fiat currency system as a way. I'll tell you, as a way to print unlimited money without
So
responsibility.
is that a better way of running an economy or a worse way?
No, it's not. It's a worse way. It's absolutely a worse
So
way.
my question is, why has every economy on the planet decided to run their economy in a worse way?
This is where you get into the control issue. This is exactly where you get into the control issue of central bankers.
All of them?
Yes.
Do they have like
How
a
many
clubhouse
countries?
and they need it? Or?
How many countries in the world? How many countries in the world have a central banking system? All of them.
All, yeah.
You think it's not? So you don't think it's odd that every country in the world refuses? Even smaller countries like Sweden, Switzerland. I think there may be one or two countries on the planet that have a gold-backed currency. And those countries, it's amazing that they experience zero inflation, zero to actually negative inflation. Why? Because if you allow, let me ask you this: what is the benefit of being able to print money unlimited? What is the benefit?
The benefit is if you're able to ease your boom and bust cycle. The benefit is that if you're having times of great economic disparity, so for instance over COVID, you're able to produce a whole bunch of stimulus so everybody doesn't go homeless when their businesses are closed for 6 months. Or if you look at 2007, you're able to stimulate your economy enough such that people aren't literally in civil war on the streets and starving to death. Notice there aren't people writing books like they did about the Great Depression. They're not going to write those books about COVID. They're not going to write those books about 2007. That's the difference.
So you're telling me that it is better to print money to get out of a situation that could have been avoided in the first place? Why, let me ask you this. Hold on.
If you have a theoretical world where you can avoid all catastrophe, then that's the better world, of course, but that's not the world that we live in.
Definitely. One simple question. Why did Woodrow Wilson admit to the American people that he regretted signing the Federal Reserve Act into law?
I don't know, because Jesus told him in a dream.
No, Jesus had nothing to do with it. Jesus had nothing to do with it. In fact, I would actually argue that Jesus would have told you to use gold coin, actually, because he was actually back when money was backed by something. But Woodrow Wilson said, I unwillingly admit that I have now signed this nation over to be controlled by its system of credit. Period, point blank, end of story. And that is what the United States has been controlled by since the Federal Reserve came into existence. So if you can't even create me a solution to a national debt problem, it would seem to me that there's no point in talking about.
The solution is easy. You just spend less money than you take in tax receipts. Donald Trump is.
Why has no president been able to do that? Why has the national deficit increased? Destiny. A budget surplus is not the elimination of the deficit. That's what you keep. You have to
When you say
quantify.
deficit, what do you think a deficit refers to?
What was the national debt under Clinton?
Wait, what is a deficit? Do you know what a budget deficit is?
The amount of money that is owed to somebody by somebody. In this particular case, the United States government owed to its debtors. Here it comes
Wait,
the story.
chill. Now, so when you have a budget, you have an income, and then you have like your outlays. You got how much money you make and how much money you spend. When you spend more money than you make, you have a deficit, a shortfall. You have to borrow to make up the deficit, right? That's what were the people buying back then? It was so much better than they are now.
Well, I was a child back.
1933, when they had so much more purchasing power, what was everybody buying? What were they buying? They had so much purchasing power with all their money.
They were able to buy property back then. Destiny. The prices of goods, the prices of goods and services were cheaper by comparison to today's dollars. My entire
So
point.
you think that people had a better standard of living in 1933?
I didn't say
than-
I didn't say standard of living. I'm speaking of the prices paid for goods.
What is if the ability to purchase goods were cheaper? What is that? Not a higher standard of living.
So if by your definition, okay, right, higher standard of living, sure, higher standard of living. So if the people back then were able to purchase goods for cheaper back then, I would argue, yes, they had a higher standard of living. They may not have had the same technology, but that's not what we're speaking to. If you cannot refute the point that the dollar has lost its value since the Federal Reserve has come into existence, and that the only way truly to combat high inflation is to eliminate or at least restructure the current organization of the Fed, then there's no point in continuing the
I can't
conversation.
comment on that point because I think the point is true. I just don't think it matters. Inflation is built into our current monetary system.
So you're acknowledging my point in real time to say that inflation is built in.
Yes, inflation is built in. Everybody understands that.
Right, so that means that Austin is right. If inflation's built in, you just proved my point in real time.
No, because
Destiny.
your point is that it
Fantastic.
somehow makes economies worse. And you
He literally
understand
just proves
why
it in real
every
time.
single economy in the world chooses to run their economy.
That is a
about
problem,
money.
Destiny. What I'm
But
calling
as for
for.
who?
what
Nobody
I'm-
agrees with you that it's a problem.
Oh, a lot of people do. A lot of people do. Ron Paul did. There have been HR 2345, which is a House bill. You can go look this up. HR 2345 calls for the reinstatement of the gold standard. So there are members of the House of Congress right now that agree with my philosophy. If you think I'm lying, look it up. HR 2345 calls for the reintroduction of the gold standard. And what that would do is kill inflation overnight. It would kill inflation immediately.
Okay,
You know why?
you know what, let's
Because it
just-
would finally bring into control the out of control spending of the Fed. It would finally once and for all.
That's something irrelevant.
Oh,
the,
right,
The
sure it
government
doesn't.
spending is what you have to worry about, right?
But it would call that, it would curtail all of it, Destiny. Do you know, have you looked up HR 2345?
I don't need to look at HR.
You do. It's a bill. It's on the floor right now. It's a great bill. That's a big, beautiful bill for you, by the way. That's the one you want to look up. HR 2345.
Okay, we thought the Fed spent money. Okay, slow down. All right. Okay. What I'm asking is okay. Actually, let's run.
I'll be running for in 2030, by the way.
Let's say hypothetically we went back to the gold standard.
Yeah.
Do you think that trade deficits are a problem?
They're absolutely a problem. Absolutely.
What would you do if the United States economy had no more inflation and every other economy continues to operate as normal?
So that wouldn't happen.
What do you mean?
That wouldn't happen. Because the United States dollar is currently the reserve currency of the world, assuming that the U.S. dollar maintained its status, which, by the way, under the gold standard, I'm sure it would, because the price of gold as set in the bill would be set to $10,000 an ounce, which would allow the United
If
States.
we have no more trade deficit and you can't buy U.S. debt, how is the United States the reserve currency of the world?
Destiny, what I'm telling you is this. At present, the U.S. dollar is... No. We got to walk this through, right? You asked a question. Allow me the space to answer. Is the U.S. dollar currently the world's reserve currency? Yes or no?
Yes, because people
so-
can hold
no, no,
extra
no.
USD because we have trade deficits.
Okay, you're correct. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying that. Under the HR 2345, it speaks to the trade deficits. The price of gold would be restructured to around $10,000 an ounce. So the trade deficit, we would still be able to trade with other nations, deal with our debt. It would simply be revalued. That's all that would happen.
Yeah, but what would happen is if other countries' economies continue other countries' economies continue to inflate, they're not going to be able to buy U.S. goods because they won't be able to afford anything here. Our currency will be too strong.
Destiny, if our dollar was backed by gold, the purchasing power would return. If you admit, first of all, before we continue, do you agree that the U.S. dollar has lost 97% of its purchasing power?
No, I think that's a naive and a crude analysis.
Bullshit. So how much money have we lost? What is
it doesn't make sense to say how much money. Like,
how much value? Stop.
It's not about value. No, it doesn't make sense to say that.
How much value?
The problem is you don't have a concept of any of these economic ideas. You're just memorizing lines. No, because when you say we've lost 97% of our purchasing power, well then what I'm looking at is money is worthless. At the end of the day, you can't eat a dollar bill. What matters is what you can buy with it. Right. It matters the goods and services that are available to you for having your dollar. What can you trade it for? If I go back to 1933 when we had a gold standard, if I go back to the Great Depression and I compare the standard of living then to any of the standards of living now, or even through our current economic crises, we are ahead in every single conceivable metric. So it seems like, despite a difference in absolute purchasing power, despite the inflation, the dollars can still buy the things that we need, and that's all that matters. At the end of the day, the currency is just a barter system. It's a way to buy and sell things between other people.
Currency's always been a barter system. The problem is when it's backed by nothing, people tend to suffer.
Suffer, but I'm asking you, how do we suffer?
We suffer because, let me ask you this: what's the average income of today's Americans? The fact that 90% of Americans are with one paycheck away from a serious financial crisis should let you know that people are suffering around here. The fact that most Americans now live with their mother or father, when back then, in my mother's generation, my father's generation, you could buy a house, should indicate that something has happened to the purchasing power of our dollar. If my mother could purchase a house back then, my grandmother, my great-grandfather, they could, but now my generation can't, that screams to me one word: it's a lot of bullshit. And that's just the bottom line. So if you don't think that that's suffering, then we have a serious problem.
So the idea, the illusion...
Do you admit that that's true?
No, that's not true.
Oh,
there was no time in U.S. history where every single person had a house with a white picket fence. You need to watch less sitcoms and look at more actual data for how people own houses. The idea that back then, if you want to talk about the types of houses that they own, you can find those houses today. They're in rural Nebraska, Missouri, Utah, Montana. If you want to go buy a house there, you're welcome to do so. You can probably real cheap. There are plenty of places in the US you can do that. If everyone wants to live in these huge cities where the cost of living is going up, which it is, and even when
why is the cost going up?
That's my back because there's very few people, or there's a lot of people competing for very few homes.
You're willing to first, no, that's because corporations, who are multi-billion-dollar corporations, by the way, which we need to overturn Citizens United, but that's another story. They're buying up properties in mass, being able to jack the rent up on apartments, luxury townhomes, condos, you name it. That's the problem. The money has been monopolized into the hands of a select few, which takes away the common man's ability to earn a living, earn an honest wage, work at a company for 20 years, get a house, get the picket fence, get the door. That's the problem. That's the thing you're not willing to admit. You're willing to tell me the truth in one aspect, that our dollar has lost power in its purchasability, but now all of a sudden, well, no one's ever been able to buy a house. Now all of a sudden this moral relativism is somehow supposed to pass, which I call, again, BS.
Do you think that people earn the same amount of money they do today that they did?
No, they don't.
So our paychecks are also increasing as the inflation increases.
Everything has to increase if everything is worth less.
Correct.
You keep literally proving my point in real time.
Except I'm not, because you're just taking it for granted. You're saying that those things are bad, but the United States economy since 1933 has only become more dominant across the entire planet. Our standard of living has only increased since then in every conceivable metric. There is no country in the world that is deploying the economic ideas that you're insinuating they should, even when they've been our absolute enemies. The Soviet Union didn't use a gold standard. China didn't use a gold standard. Now Iran doesn't use a gold standard. None of these other countries are deploying these superior economic measures for some reason.
So you're telling me, wait a minute. You're telling me that you would argue right now that the standard of living in the United States has increased when we have seen some of the worst homeless epidemics that we've ever seen in the history of this country within the past 3 to 4 presidential administrations. You're really telling me now that the standard of living has increased in this country when the average American is incapable of buying their own damn house?
Do you think that the average American
will you
today...
concede? No.
Will you concede? Has increased since 1933?
Will you concede?
Yes.
Will you concede the point?
Most people are not homeless.
Oh,
we don't live in California. Listen, most people are not homeless.
Well, let's not talk about California.
You
don't want to talk about California. You don't want to go there. That's not a good conversation. You're willing to sit here and blatantly say that most Americans can afford a house today.
Probably not today, but most Americans have never been able to afford a house.
How many different times can he prove my point without
admitting? You're not proving any point.
You just admit 3 times.
Most Americans never owned a home. That's never been the case.
Destiny, has there ever been a point in our country's history, And as a matter of fact, let me take you back to 1968 once again. This is a classic. When black people were at our economically lowest, we actually had higher ownership rates while we were more oppressed, earning less, by the way, because our dollar was still backed by something. To quote Dr. King, in fact, in 1968, the annual collective net worth of the American Negro was $30.63 billion a year, which was more than all of the exports of the United States at that time and more than the national budget of Canada. Home ownership among black communities were higher back then while we were suffering under the horrors of Jim Crow and under the horrors of oppressive economic conditions. And there are more black people, men and women today, that own homes now than back then. So if the standard of living has increased, it's increased for everybody except black Americans. So that right there disproves your point using logic, facts, and objective data.
Well, if anything, that would probably prove the point that there exist problems in certain communities that need to be addressed. It doesn't prove that a fiat currency system is bad.
Okay, so if a fiat currency is willing to essentially
Do
steal...
you think that in the beginning of the United States history, when they said things like only landowners could vote, you think that was everybody?
Okay, we're not talking about that. We're dealing with one specific issue. We're specifically speaking of currency. Now you want to divert the topic to something that I didn't mention
I'm
or
not
care to
diverting.
discuss.
We've gone back to 1930 degrees so much, I feel like I'm 100 years old.
Well, I mean, hey, aging looks good on you. I got to tell you, it looks great. But I mean, every once in a while, I got to give you a history lesson, clearly, because your refusal to acknowledge that our dollar has lost value, which is that.
I've already acknowledged that it's built into the system.
So then change the damn system.
But it would be
if
bad
that
for
is
our
built into the
economy.
system, does it
It
not
would
make
be
sense
bad.
to change the system?
It would be bad for the economy.
Not if you restructure it properly, which is exactly why I would.
The whole thing, and what, Donald Trump is going to do that? The guy who thinks invisible planes are invisible?
It may not be Trump to do it. It may require someone different. It may. But the point is that the bill currently exists.
If Donald Trump is doing so much good for the economy and people are liking the direction he's taking it, why didn't we have an economic contraction last quarter? Why are the bond yield markets increasing instead of decreasing? Why is the faith in the U.S. economy around the world shrinking?
It's not shrinking. In fact, the faith in the U.S. economy has grown. Trump just re-extended the tax cuts that he originally put in. Inflation is still holding. The CPI index has reached a lower or a higher level, where our purchasing power is a little bit higher than what even CNN anticipated. So that's not even remotely accurate.
We're not matching our job reports. CPI is doing good because demand is slowing down, and that's going to cause a decrease in oil prices. So of course, if you're waiting for a basket of goods for oil, then yeah, that is coming down a bit.
So I suppose you're also going to now make the argument that inflation is not lower than what it was when.
No, but inflation is not the be-all to end-all for economic policy.
Oh,
just like how you guys pretend you care about inflation, except when inflation is higher or Trump, I guess you wouldn't care. You guys pretend to care about the deficit, except when the deficit is higher or Trump, you guys don't care.
I absolutely care. I absolutely care when inflation is high, and I would absolutely hold Trump accountable. It is very interesting to me that in 2020, when he left, inflation was still holding at a lower point than it was under Biden.
The entire world economy was shut down. Why would that be surprising to you?
And yet somehow we still saw more economic growth under Trump in 2020 than we saw under Biden. Meanwhile, by the way, we continue.
It's not even possible.
What do you mean it's not possible? The Inflation Reduction Act that Kamala Harris used her time-breaking vote to pass led to massive inflation, and Congressman Byron Donalds even referenced this plenty of times on plenty of.
Definitionally not.
Sure it is, Destiny. So I guess Congressman Byron Donalds, who has great access to this information, was full of shit.
Does he have an R next to his name? Because if so, he probably is.
Oh, great. Well, if you have the inability to accept truth from someone with an opposing worldview, then I guess there's not much point talking to.
Just when they're delusional.
Well, I think Democrats are delusional. Once again, you can't even define what a man or a woman is. But hey, I don't know. Maybe Democrats are more delusional than us. At least I can tell you what a man is and a woman. I don't know. At least I can tell you that. But if that makes us delusional, then hey, if an R, which by the way, I'm actually pro the removal, if possible, of either the Republican or Democratic Party. We should vote on policy, not party. But that's just me personally. But hey, maybe I'm a little goofy for that. Maybe I'm a little loofy for it. I don't know.
I don't know why you guys spend so much time thinking about chicks with dicks, but it's not really a huge policy concern for me to obsess over trans people. If you want to talk about trans people all day, that's fine. You could run down that road. I think there are more pressing issues facing this country right now.
I mean, it's not. There are absolutely more pressing issues, like the one I'm trying to deal with, which is the one that affects my pockets every day. Ensuring that inflation stays low, that we restructure the Federal Reserve and make the dollar stronger. Those are the things that matter to me. Not because I'm not just thinking about me. I'm thinking about my children. My children.
So at the end of 4 years, what's your measure for if Trump did a good job or not?
We'd have to see reduced inflation, a reduced deficit, which again, I'm not going to give Trump. I'm not going to give Trump credit for that.
Inflation.
I will grant you. No, but once again, like I said, I grant you this. I would love to see a reduction in the deficit, which I'm not sure if we're going to see the Trump. I'm not sure. I will grant you that. I will hold Trump accountable. And what would make Trump a great president to me is a reduced deficit, lower inflation, and the release of the Epstein files. That would make Trump a great president.
Okay, so the deficit's not going down.
It may not. It may not. Like I said, that one I'll grant.
Inflation can hold, but that's not the sign of a strong economy. It's just inflation.
Well, if that holds and the CPI continues to show positive growth, then I would say that. Yes.
This is like a 4-year-old in special ed. You're giving him like the easiest guidelines possible.
Well,
like my goal for Donald Trump is that inflation stays the same. It's not even his job. It's the Federal Reserve's job. It's not even the job of the president.
Well, if we pass HR 2345, that would actually make a hell of a difference in the economy because it would kill inflation overnight. But hey, that one we might not see. I'll give you that.
So it's been 90 days. We have 0 deals. How do we feel about Trump's?
Well, he did secure $2 trillion in investments from the UAE. He did secure over $2 trillion in investments over the next 10 years. But that is
that's not anything, right? So the question is, where are the deals? He's the president of the United States. Where are the trade deals?
Well, he has the reciprocal tariffs that he's working on. He has not only that. That is the trade deal. He's working on trade is constantly being negotiated right now as we speak. This. Well,
I didn't ask you for months and months. There are no trade deals.
Okay, let me ask you. Okay, so let me flip the question. In your mind, if you're willing to say that Trump could have a successful presidency, what would that look like?
At this point, he would have to reverse course on a lot of the stuff he's already done. So,
okay, so
respect for the rule of law would be nice, right? Listening to orders issued from judges would be nice.
You mean judges that make it their business to undo everything he does? You mean judges
who make it their business to rule on federal matters, like what judges are supposed to do?
Okay, Destiny. So I didn't let you finish. So what, in your mind, would other than the judges thing, what could Trump do to where you would say, you know what? This bastard did something worth a damn.
He could stop suing everybody that he disagrees with. That'd be a nice thing.
Well, I mean, if I make MSNBC pay me $19 million for defamation, then I think that's a win. And if I ever become president and you defame my character and I sue the shit out of you, I want my check too. I just gotta say, I want my money.
If you could be a 6'2"
I want my money.
If you could be a 6'2" giga Chad and be digging out prostitutes while doing cocaine, why can't we say that's a win too for Hunter Biden?
Well. When you get a preemptive,
maybe it's not going to have the president of the United States suing pollsters.
When you get a preemptive pardon from your father for backdoor trade deals with China that could have very well been signed by Donald Penn, I don't know that Hunter Biden is a good example. Let's deal specifically with the president, because if we start getting
now we want to talk about the president.
Well, I mean, if we start doing familial ties
with Hunter Biden.
Well, if you're the son of the president of the United States and engaging in what could be seen as acts of treason, I think that would be a serious problem.
Do you feel the same about Kushner, whose hedge fund was signing $2 billion deals with MBS in Saudi Arabia after he negotiated the Abraham Accords?
I absolutely think that's wrong as well. I would hold him accountable for that.
Because that deal was like 3 orders of magnitude, like 10,000% more than the totality of money that Hunter Biden supposedly made while he was working in Ukraine.
So once again,
and also Hunter Biden had no direct involvement with the government whatsoever, whereas Kushner was brought into the White House to be our envoy to negotiate these with the Middle East. Isn't that kind of weird? Isn't that a little bit corrupt?
Once again, where Trump is wrong, I call it out. But once again, so you still haven't finished. What else would Trump have to do? You said reverse course. You mentioned the judges. You mentioned Kushner. What else would Trump have to do to make sure that you could at least call him a decent president?
Not falsely claiming that we're at war with other countries like Venezuela in order to deport people. That'd be a good start. The invocation of the Alien Act is
He claimed we're at war with illegal immigrants, Destiny. In what world is it logical to allow people to come over to the country illegally? Meanwhile, there is a process through which, if followed legally, everyone can come over to the country. And Barack Obama, what I love about this, hold on, let me make this point. It is so interesting that people love damning Trump for trying to handle illegal immigration, when at present, Barack Obama has still to this day deported more.
We're talking about Obama right now. I don't know why he's up.
I mean, it's a matter of comparison, is it not? It's a matter of comparison. Barack Obama still to this day deported more illegals than Trump. Yet when Trump does it, it's bullshit.
That's where the big Obama numbers come from, and that's substantively different.
Which is what he's supposed to do.
We're at war with Venezuela right now. You understand that's how the Alien Enemies Act work. They're enemies of the state. That Venezuela is invading us right now. That's why we've been part of the
If illegals are in this country,
you're not answering my who are you talking to?
If illegals are in the country,
we're at war with Venezuela?
Not in the typical sense, no. But what Trump is, he's speaking hyperbole. If you're speaking in a hyperbole,
he's not speaking hyperbole. He invoked a law. That's not hyperbole.
In order to give him the authority to remove the illegals with swiftness, which is what I actually am for. If you're in this country illegally, not following the proper legal process, then the President of the United States should have authority to remove illegals out of the country, which does a disservice to those that are trying to do things the right damn way.
Sure, and we have a process for that. It's called the legal system.
Oh, great, exactly. So when we go to the southern border, right, they're not even doing that. They're not doing that. They're not doing things the legal way, and you're acknowledging
that. He should pick up a book and learn how it works. He's the President of the United States. Or at the very least, he can pick somebody to hang words when Christie's asked, what what is habeas corpus? And she says, it's Trump's ability to deport people. Maybe she's not the right person for the job. Maybe?
That was funny. I'll give you that. That was pretty good. That was pretty good. But you're telling me that so you're telling me essentially that is it wrong to remove those that are here illegally? Because I want to get you on the record with this. Is it wrong?
No one is saying that. That's what the conversation's about.
No. This conversation, you've now made the conversation about illegal immigrants.
No, we're making the conversation about the process by which he is deporting them.
Okay, so what is wrong, once again, what is wrong with deporting illegal immigrants in a swift fashion? What's wrong with that?
Because he said we were at war with Venezuela when he said so.
I believe the president was speaking in a hyperbolic sense, but at present, in principle, which gave him the authority. Why did he invoke the law? He gave him the executive.
Trump like you talk about an abusive Trump uncle. He doesn't mean it when he says it like that. He wants what's best for
If
you.
he invoked the law, he invoked the law to give him he invokes the law to grant him the executive authority necessary to execute his agenda, which is the removal of illegals from this country, which is a power granted to him by the Constitution of the United States.
So if the president comes in,
true or not? Is that true or false, Destiny? Destiny, is that true or false? Destiny, is it true or false?
It is true that he invoked the law so that he could avoid due process for certain groups of the game.
Is it true that the Constitution grants powers to the president to act once a state of emergency is declared to the point of him enacting the law? If we are facing, which he said in his inauguration, this actually shows how true Trump is to his agenda. He said, I'm going to invoke a national emergency at the southern border to deal with the migrant crisis. And since then, we have deported over 100,000 illegal immigrants. So that means that Trump is at least a man of his word. He's clearing the country of illegals, and we've seen no border crossings since he started doing what he said he was going to do.
That is true because nobody's coming here right now. Tourism is down across every single.
I wonder why. Because he stopped it. Because he stopped it, which means that he did what he said he was going to do, which means Trump is a man of his
Make
word.
America an unappealing place to go to? Was that the goal the whole time?
If America was so unappealing, there wouldn't be so many illegals trying their damnedest to get over to this country.
As of right now, they're not trying to get in
So
anymore,
you're
right?
proving my point in real time. This is
They're
fantastic.
not trying to get in anymore, right?
They can't, because you know why? Because we finally got a president with the balls to put a stop to the bullshit in the White House. When Trump says he wants to do something, he does it. When he says he wants to stop something, he stops it. And when he says we're going to declare a national emergency at the southern border, we're going to deal with the crisis, and we're going to
stop. Why did we stop Ukraine and Russia? That was a day zero stop. Why did we stop? Why did we get the hostages?
That's a great. That actually is a fantastic question. You know
Biden
what?
coming up at 5.
No, Biden's not going to come at all. Biden's not going to come at all. The reason we have not dealt with Ukraine is because, unfortunately, for those of you that know who Smedley D. Butler is, he was a famous military general that made one very powerful statement. War is a racket. It is the only economic activity in which profits are reckoned in dollars and the losses in lives. The fact is that the United States government is a war machine, and it has been for a long time. And as much as I wish Trump would do his best to end the war, which, by the way, he has, when he brought Zelensky to the White House, and that man didn't even have the common decency to come into the most sacred building in the United States wearing his suit, but rather coming in here asking for our money after already having been handed billions of dollars by Biden. Trump told him back, Trump said plainly, you don't have the courage right now. We have the courage. Trump tried to end the war. Zelensky wanted more money. And the fact of the matter is, I hate to say this, I do not give Trump credit on his handling of Ukraine. I think the war should have been ended a long damn time ago. But that speaks more to a global machine of war, the military-industrial complex, even vastly more than industrial complex.
Trump lied or failed that he was going to end that war.
I'll give you that he failed, but he didn't lie. He didn't lie. No, he didn't lie. Presidents fail.
And he failed to get the hostages back from Hamas in Gaza. He said on day zero, he said they negotiated a whole deal with Hamas to get hostages back.
Not all of them, the hostages have come back.
That was implied a failure, right?
No, it's not an implied failure. If some of the hostages have come back, that is a partial win.
He said that war would be over on day zero. He said that conflict would end immediately because people were scared of Trump and that they would respect his rule.
So when Barack Obama, if every single word out of a president's mouth has to be 100% true, then that means that, and I hate to do this, but I have no choice. When Barack Obama passed Obamacare, he said, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan, period. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor, period. And over 400,000 Americans lost their health insurance benefits the minute he said that, the minute Obamacare was signed. So we're going to hold Obama accountable for that, or are you going to also still count Obamacare as a win? Which, by the way, was still
and I'm not going to vote for the next election. I don't know why Obama is being brought up.
No, but my point is, the point I'm making
is that it's not about him being 100% correct. It's about him being at least like 10% correct.
Oh, for Christ's sake, Destiny. Do you give him credit? Do you give Trump credit for anything at all, or do you just hate his guts? Is his TDS that damn bad? Which one is it?
What would you like to give credit for?
Oh, no, I'm asking, is there anything that Trump did with low inflation when he first left, lowest black, which I'll tell you this, here's something that you can't not give him credit for. Black unemployment was at its lowest point under Trump from 2016 through 2020 than at any point it was in the past 50 years. So if that's not something to give him credit for, then, I mean, I guess
You know what I give him credit for?
What do you give him credit for?
Operation Warp Speed.
That was funny. That was funny. That one I can't remember. That was good. That was good. That was good. Go ahead.
So Trump has failed on the foreign policy front completely and utterly. Ukraine is still raging on. Israel's still blowing everybody up. We're blowing up people for Israel. We bombed Iran for it.
I disagree. I'm going to tell you this right now. Hate me all you want. I completely disagree with the way that he has handled Israel. But I do agree with Trump when he said that, unfortunately, you have two countries that are fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. He did admit that neither of those countries are doing what they're supposed to do.
Now,
and the fact of the matter is that hold on. We cannot shirk away from the fact, and I will not shirk away from the fact that Trump did negotiate a ceasefire. The minute that ceasefire was negotiated, Israel went. Bibi Netanyahu, who by the way has committed he's done a lot of foul things. We got to investigate this. We got to call it out. We got to be honest. He went behind Trump's back, illegally fired missiles, which broke the ceasefire. So that's not on Trump. That's on Bibi Netanyahu, and his ass needs to be held accountable for it. And I'll say it on any damn camera in here. Bibi Netanyahu needs to be held accountable, not the president of the United States.
So how upsetting is that? Do you think Trump's going to hold him accountable?
I'm sorry.
Is Trump going to hold him accountable?
I don't think Trump is. I think. Well, now listen, Destiny. I don't disagree with you on that. Again, the way that Trump handled that war, he did his best. That I'll say he did his best. He failed. He failed. He negotiated bullshit. He did something. He did negotiate a ceasefire. What Bibi Netanyahu, Destiny, come on. Trump is trying his damnedest. This is, if you give him nothing else, you have to give the orange man this.
Excuse me, conservatives have been against participation trophies for the entirety of my life. Trump's not getting one right now.
Okay, so now it's interesting. So now we're ignoring that there are instances where presidents' hands can be tied. If a foreign government, which is what the nation of Israel is still a foreign government, if they go behind a president's back after a ceasefire deal is negotiated, now you're going to blame it on Trump. I suppose you're also going to blame what happened in Texas on Trump too. Like you tweeted that those victims and those children wouldn't have died if Trump was not president in the floods. I guess you're going to do that now too.
This is the equivalent of somebody opening your chest, seeing your heart, and going, "Wow, surgery's a lot tougher than I thought it was." Donald Trump said he was qualified to do the job. He said he could fix these problems. He said he was going to go in and do it on day zero, and he failed on every single conceivable metric. You don't get credit for that. Unfortunately, when it comes to this election, day zero sum game,
so now you don't get credit for the attempt. So now it's really interesting how liberals operate.
To fix a foreign policy issue.
So now wait a minute, Destiny, hold on, because we saw the tweet. You said that because let's start here. Did you say that if Trump was not president, that those children would not have passed away in the floods in Texas?
I don't think, no, if I hadn't tweeted about it though, I don't think that would have saved any lives either. So I don't know what the point is of this.
Oh, okay. So now my point is this. You're saying that when Trump fails, it's all Trump's fault, as if there are not other agents involved in the war between Israel and Iran. Or is it all Trump's fault? Which one is it?
Donald Trump didn't promise us no floods like he promised us no new wars.
Well, he can't control the natural disaster, Destiny. That'd be an act of God, the God that you don't believe in. But I'm sitting here telling you that the fact of the matter is...
But he didn't say there would be no new floods. He said there would be no wars.
Well, once again, does he control the entirety of the world stage, or does he control the United States?
Maybe that was a bad idea.
What he said was, I will be an anti-war president, and to the best of his ability, he held on to that standard.
He said he can't use ignorance as an excuse because he was president for 4 years while the war raged on in Ukraine and Russia. Nothing changed about it, so he knew it was complicated.
When did Russia invade Ukraine? They annexed Ukraine under Trump. They invaded under who? Biden. They invaded under Biden. The annexation began under Trump. That is true. I grant you that. The invasion took place under Biden. And the fact is that Biden gave $20 billion, billions of dollars to Ukraine. Had all the money to give to Ukraine, no money to give to American citizens to combat the out of whack inflation that we had. But then again, we still live in America. Where in Destiny's worldview, most people can still buy a home. Wait, everybody can't buy a home.
Americans would increase inflation.
I'm sorry?
I thought giving money to Americans would increase inflation.
Well, giving $20 billion to a foreign nation damn sure wouldn't it? If you're going to increase inflation, at least put the money in the hands of your own damn citizens, not stick your nose in foreign business. Which one of those makes more sense? This is why I'm America first. I'm America first, everybody else second. Before we a nation, my master says that a nation and a house divided against itself cannot stand. It is the most foolish errand in the world to me to deal with what's going on overseas before we take care of business at home.
So don't you think a guy who is forcibly deploying the military to a state that isn't asking for it, or a guy who gives nicknames that are negative to every single political opponent he has, or a guy who says he hates Democrats?
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah. Trump is not unifying the country in any way.
He's not supposed to unify the country. What he's exposing is a weak. What he's exposing.
For every American?
No, Destiny, you're literally proving my point. I just told you a nation divided itself can't stand. What I'm speaking to is the fact that our government is more willing and has been more willing under the Biden and Obama administrations, prior one under Trump, because we only had him twice, and there was a fractured election in those after the first term. Other presidents have demonstrated a capacity and a propensity to deal with the issues of foreign nations before they deal with nations at home. What I'm saying is that Trump has been, to the best of his ability, I believe, the most pro-America president that we've had in recent memory. All I am saying is this. At the end of the day, Trump is not going to be a perfect president. I refuse to believe that he will be. But what we need in the White House, and what I would prefer, this is why I voted for him not once, not twice, but 3 times, and if it was legal and constitutionally eligible, I'd do it again for another one. But for sure.
No one is asking for perfect. We're just asking for passing. Nobody's saying he has to be an A+ president, but he could try not to be an F president.
Who in your mind?
Biden.
So what did Biden was a passing president?
Compared to Trump,
Massively adding to the debt was a great.
Like Trump has. At least Biden had an excuse for it because he was going to get a COVID.
Oh yeah, the Inflation Reduction Act was a great excuse. Yeah, let's add trillions of dollars to the national debt. Let's weaken the dollar even more.
Trump's excuse.
What do you mean? We had lower inflation than Trump.
We added to the debt. We added larger deficits. He grew it every single year. He was in office the first time he was in office for no reason. He came into a booming economy and he added to the deficit for no reason. He came in this time.
We had a stronger economy.
Donald Trump would do nothing and benefit from Biden's economy, and he got somehow a quarter-1 contraction.
Biden inherited an economy with zero inflation.
What are you talking about? Biden inherited
an economy. Biden inherited
coronavirus that was raging the world.
Biden-
Trump denied its existence over the first month.
He denied the existence. That's a lie. That's an outright lie. Trump was the first to acknowledge, because he could go back and look at his tweets. He called it the Wuhan virus. He immediately banned travel from China. And as soon as once Fauci got in and he said, "Oh no, it's not. It wasn't originated in a lab. It didn't happen in a lab." Trump was just acquitted, or rather, I shouldn't say acquitted. He was vindicated because recent reports showed that Trump was telling the truth. COVID-19 did originate in a lab in Wuhan, China. So
There's not even any evidence of that.
Really?
Yes, really.
Oh, okay. So there's no. So now there's no.
Trust me, you don't want to have this video.
Oh no, we can do it.
Despite the fact, okay, that Donald Trump lied about COVID, was he not on Twitter, just to be clear, okay? I'm telling you if I've seen the same videos as you and me, okay? And was he not on the press stand saying that there's probably only 100 active cases in the United States?
I remember that time.
So that was a total lie, right? Or was that just another
So the U.S. intelligence community stated that SARS likely emerged via small-scale human exposure no later than 2019, when the first known cluster in Wuhan in December of 2019, and that came from the U.S. intelligence community.
emerged from where?
From Wuhan, China.
From the wet market.
Oh my freaking!
Read the rest of the report. I read it all.
So a World Health Organization China joint study conducted the earliest recognized cases and they concluded that the earliest recognized cases occurred in very early December 2019 in Wuhan, with the very first reported illness on December 8th, 2019, and most cases from mid to late December in Wuhan, China. So when Trump...
That December 8th case was somebody associated with the wet market. First four.
My point was that it originated in Wuhan, not the United States of America.
That except for China.
You just did.
I said it didn't leak from a lab.
It did originate from a lab in Wuhan, China, which is what the findings show, Destiny. You can't backtrack now that you've been caught in the crossfire. It doesn't work that way. The fact of the matter is the COVID virus originated in a lab in Wuhan. Trump said this on Twitter. He was called a xenophobe. He was called an asshole for banning travel. Yet now, even the World Health Organization vindicated Trump for his statement. So what you just said is complete and total bullshit.
How do you reconcile the fact that Trump and all of you guys don't trust vaccines now, but he pushed Operation Warp Speed? Was that another mistake he made, or?
Well, if you want to reopen, why did he push Operation Warp Speed, which was the vaccine? Why did he push that? He wanted to reopen businesses. Did Trump at the time mandate the vaccine? Hell no, he didn't. He didn't mandate the vaccine. Businesses mandated the vaccine. So what would you do? What would you have the president do in a state of national emergency where you're in the middle of a public health crisis? Would you not accelerate the production of a vaccine to combat a virus that shut down businesses, that kept people in their houses, that stopped commerce? Would you do something about it?
That's what the vaccine did? Was it stop the virus?
I'm asking you a question.
Well, I'm asking you how you feel.
You're answering the question. You're answering the question with a question, Destiny.
I know, I asked you a very good question.
No, I'm asking you, what would you have had him do?
Do not trust vaccines now, especially the mRNA ones. He pushed Operation Warp Speed to make those vaccines.
And I ask you again, because you're not going to answer my question with a question.
I'll answer your question.
What will
vaccine? Of course, it's going to stop disease. Yes.
Okay, then. So what's the point of that question? The question is
You guys
answered.
trust it now.
You don't have to trust the vaccine. The fact is that he made it. The fact is that he made it. No, he didn't mandate the vaccine. He didn't mandate it. If he mandated it, that's one thing. He didn't mandate it. The mask mandates, yes. He mandated masks in public facilities. That's absolutely 100% true. But the fact is, if you're the president of the United States, you owe it to work for the safety and security of your citizens. So his
But
decision...
conservatives don't believe that now.
Destiny, you can't say conservatives don't believe that now.
Who do you think is more likely to take the vaccine, a Democrat or a Republican?
It doesn't matter who's more likely to take it. If we're sitting here having a conversation, if we're sitting here having a conversation around the vaccine, when Trump made the decision to pour billions of dollars into vaccine creation to try to combat closed businesses, combat people staying in their houses, what he did was make an effort to reopen the U.S. economy instead of
Why
having
didn't he
it
just open it without doing anything? Why didn't he just force it to open the economy at all?
Why would he do that without trying to combat it? So now you want him to walk into this linguistic and economic and socio-political trap where he just opens businesses and does nothing to combat it. So on one hand, you want him to do nothing, then when he does nothing, that's his fault. Then when he does something that you disagree with, oh, it's still Trump's fault. So in the end, from your point of view, it's all fuck Trump.
So you agree with the early lockdowns, keep America safe?
No, I don't agree that they kept everyone safe. I'm not agreeing. What I'm saying is the lockdowns did to some to keep people safe, it mitigated the spread of the virus. What I'm saying to you is his decision to push the vaccine out as fast as possible, if anything, showed that he was operating in the health and interest of the United States citizens to reopen businesses. Because if commerce is stalled, what good is the country, Destiny, if commerce is stalled? What good is it?
Well, if it's operating under fiat currency, it doesn't matter anyway, because it's 97% of purchase.
Well, I mean, you believe it's the greatest system in the world anyway, so we're just going to assume that your point of view is correct, even though it's bullshit.
Okay, well, I feel like there's obvious evidence contrary to that. And, okay, I'm curious, help me connect the dots here, because I don't,
Go ahead.
maybe I'm saying experience here. So, Trump pushes for warp speed, or vaccines,
Right.
okay, that you guys don't trust. Trump pushed for kind of lockdowns early on, you guys thought were largely...
Wait, hold on.
I just know this, I think you can talk. Trump said that the war would end on day zero with Ukraine and Israel. It didn't. Donald Trump said that he'd release the Epstein files, and he didn't. So at what point is this a conspiracy versus Trump just plays a lot?
So Trump, that's not a win. Trust me, I'm gonna dismantle that in about 45 seconds. Watch. First of all, the Epstein files, Trump did authorize the declassification of the MLK, JFK, and Epstein files. Pam Bondi, who's the one that needs to be held accountable in this, she was on Fox News openly saying that she has the file on her desk. She openly, listen, guys, I'm not a typical Republican. I'm an honest guy. I'm going to tell you. Pam Bondi was on Fox News blatantly saying that I have the file on my desk. Trump authorized the declassification. Pam Bondi is stolen, which is why Dan Bongino just took a leave of absence, by the way, from the FBI in a dispute with Bondi over this. So the person that needs to be held accountable for holding this shit up is not Trump, it's Bondi. Trump's signature is on the paper, so hold Pam Bondi's ass accountable because she's the one holding up the file release as well.
I'm just curious, when Biden was in office, how many of his cabinet members did he blame for a failure to carry out his policy?
Well, he was too damn senile to blame anybody for a large percent of his administration. That's really a terrible question. That's a terrible question.
Who was able to talk about his executive orders he was signing? Trump can't explain any of them. They're handed to him.
Why can't he? Why can't he? So he can't explain any of them. So he truly
hasn't explained a single one. They handed the paper to sign.
How self-explanatory is the declassification of MLK and JFK files? What the hell kind of explanation do you need of that?
Why did
What do you mean?
the Epstein stuff right after?
I'm sorry, what?
When he was asked to declassify all three of those, the Epstein files after, he was on media, he was saying, well, for the Epstein stuff, I don't know, there might be some innocent people that are hurt by that.
There are innocent people there were innocent children that were hurt, and he still authorized the declassification. Pam Bondi is the one that pulled that BS stunt, inviting podcasters to the White House, handing them files that we already have information, let me finish this point. Wait, let me finish this point.
Now it's Pam Bondi's fault.
Destiny, hold on. Before, because I know we're running a long time. So before, 5 minutes, okay, great. So before we close this out, we have to acknowledge something. The president can issue a directive, but there can be occasions where people hold up the following through of an executive order. So we cannot remove that. You cannot.
I think I agree with you there because he's not Pam. Who was the one that I'm sorry, because I forget the government. Who nominated Pam Bondi to that position?
Well, Trump did, but Trump has made. Okay, you can nominate. You can absolutely nominate somebody, and then you can switch up. You never had.
That's why you guys want to go back to the gold standard so that there is no block to stop with Trump.
Well, no. I want to go back to the gold standard to save the American dollar, but that's not what we're talking about. The fact is that Pam Bondi should be held accountable as the Attorney General. If you make a statement, you should be forced to stand by the statement that you make. If you say the files,
go back to the gold standard.
no, don't run back to the gold standard now, Destiny. That's not going to work. The fact of the matter is, Destiny, we only got 5 minutes. So what I'm going to say is this: if Pam Bondi is on record making the statement that the files are on her desk, she was authorized by Trump to release the files. And what should have happened is this: rather than inviting podcasters to the White House, handing them bullshit binders of things we already had, you should have released the documents. Her failure to follow through with Trump's executive order should have her held accountable, which is exactly why Dan Bongino and even Cash Patel are now debating walking away from the FBI over this. So that has nothing to do with Trump. His signature, Destiny.
Why does Dan or just release everything?
Destiny.
You said that Trump declassified it.
His signature.
Why don't they release it all?
There are sensitive files contained within that. There are thousands of documents that still have to be
And you're
reviewed.
telling me that the head of the FBI and the deputy chief of the FBI are too stupid to know what to redact?
That's not what I'm saying.
Isn't that their job?
That's not what I'm saying to you. That is handled by both. That is handled by both. Because you're refusing to ignore that it's handled by both the Department of Justice and the FBI. It's not unilateral. So what you're failing to acknowledge, what you're failing to acknowledge is that Trump is dealing with a Congress and a media and in many ways people within his own government that are working against his agenda, the same as he did when he was running away in
Maybe less
2016.
media, less truthing, and more actually doing his job.
Well, I think he's trying to do his job. When people stand and get in the way, it kind of fucks things
I'm
up.
going to be honest, but if I was hired to do something and my boss saw me truthing in an alternate caps lock all day long, he'd probably fire me.
Well, that's why
You think it's a problem that Donald Trump, instead of maybe calling Netanyahu's our truth, saying, turn the damn planes around Israel?
well, you could make that case, or you could make the case that Trump is using social media to connect with this generation in ways that no previous president has. This is exactly why.
Instead of acting like a social media
So it's
influencer,
possible.
the president of the United
It's
States,
possible.
It's not his job to connect with us, it's his job to run the country.
So he can't do both? So the president can't do both?
Apparently he's
So your argument, so just to be clear, your argument is that Pam Bondi bears no responsibility for her blockade of the release of the Epstein files. Your argument is that it falls completely on Trump as if he didn't hire her to do a job. So by the way, when someone fails to do their job, they shouldn't be held accountable. It shouldn't be the person that he trusted to do the job. It should just be Trump. So it's all on Trump. That's what you're saying. I'm asking.
I'm saying that when I earn $7.50 an hour as a supervisor at McDonald's, my store manager
that has
came in
nothing to do with
and
my
said, why
question.
is the front of the restaurant dirty? And I said, as a supervisor, my employee messed up, I would get fired. Donald Trump said,
No. The employee and you would get fired. No, the employee and you would get fired, Destiny.
Then the fighting point up, we get to go,
Destiny.
whoa,
Destiny.
hold on,
The
don't
employee-
make any mistake. If you want to get rid of Trump, body, I'm totally okay with that.
in corporate America, they do this kind of bottom-up or top-down thing where the employee that fucks up gets fired and his supervisor. So in Pam Bondi's case, what should actually happen is she should get fired and Trump could possibly be impeached, if anything, but that's not going to happen because he signed the order to release the files. The fact of the matter is, your refusal to acknowledge that Bondi should be held just as accountable as anyone else demonstrates that you don't give a shit about doing the right thing or doing what you're told. You just want to hold Trump's feet to the fire, and then everybody else gets a fucking scapegoat.
If you care so much about this, why didn't Trump release it when Epstein died, when he was still president?
At the time, so this is, you're right. At the time, there were still multiple active investigations going on with Epstein, which would have compromised the declassification of those files in the midst of an active investigation. Or now you're going to act like, and there are also theories going on that there could have been U.S.
I'm
or
sorry,
Israeli.
just to be clear, this is the same president arguing against psychically declassified documents at Mar-a-Lago, right? You couldn't declassify stuff related to Epstein?
So you're, once again, if there are active investigations going on, Destiny, you cannot ignore that. You can't just declassify files in the middle of an
That would
active
be as crazy
investigation.
as tweeting about an active military operation on a signal group chat, wouldn't it?
Was it an active military operation or was it discussing plans? And the fact of the matter is, no sensitive information. J.D. Vance himself stated on the Theo Vaughn's podcast, which I encourage you to go watch, by the way, nothing sensitive was discussed in that signal chat, so that's a nice try, but that shit doesn't
Vance is
fly.
the kind of guy who smashes his head against the wall for 6 hours a day. I don't know if he's any sensitivity left to detect sensitive stuff.
Well, you want to get into personal. Well, you want to do the typical. You want to do the typical liberal bullshit. You want to do the typical liberal bullshit of making personal attacks when the shit you see doesn't add up.
How much? Donald Trump is the king of personal attacks. He says that Ted Cruz's wife looked like a dog.
Well, I mean, he called Rosie O'Donnell fat too, but he was telling the truth. So I mean, that doesn't really make a point. The fact of the matter is that you are still running from my initial premise. Pam Bondi is the one that got on Fox, said the files on her desk, because I'm not running from the Epstein files.
Dan Bongino's on bongo balls or whatever. He said that he had absolute proof and evidence as well that he was on the phone when he was on Tim Pool's channel and he was saying that I can call him the phone, which is Epstein. Where's all his evidence?
Kash Patel said that the FBI has the files as well, but if the Department of Justice is attempting to block an executive order, which they're also still blocking certain sections of MLK and JFK files from being released in full, by the way, which is another obstruction by the Department of Justice, which has nothing to do with Trump. The failure of an appointed official to execute the duties given to them by the president does not fall back on the president. I think Pam Bondi should just replace, and in closing, what I would say, to answer your first question in closing, because I'm sure we've gone over, my closing point is this. If Trump wants to be seen as a good president in my eyes, he would pass H.R. 2345, he would reinstate the gold standard, he would continue to make sure that inflation holds while the Fed is still around, and he would declassify the damn Epstein files, and at this point, if Pam Bondi stays in his way, fire the fucker.
Okay, wait, so then final question, I guess. Why is it that every time this is brought up to Donald Trump, he says, why do people care about this? And I called him and he said, earlier today he truthed out another schizophrenic 400.
I saw that. The reason
that shouldn't he be attacking and bonding like he attacked Jeff Sessions for not.
Well, my answer to that is very, very simple. I believe in the coming weeks you're going to see either a resignation, and I'm saying this right now, you can quote me on this in a couple weeks, by the way. We will see either Pam Bondi's resignation or termination or the release of the Epstein files. What I'm telling you is that Trump is more than likely using these files to point the, and I'm going to quote Alex Jones here. Some of you may call him French, but I'm going to quote Alex Jones. Trump may very well be using the Epstein files as a gun to point to the deep state's head to make sure they stay out of his way to get the agenda done to make America great.
So we've come full circle from there is a conspiracy.
There is a conspiracy. There is a conspiracy.
To there is a conspiracy.
I've always said
Donald Trump is the one at the head of it.
If he authorized the declassification of the files and he's being blocked, that means that it's no longer his responsibility except to remove those that are blocking the release of the files.
So why doesn't he publicly pressure them to do so?
I believe that what we're going to see in the coming weeks is that's what's going to happen.
How is it that Techner Snowden was able to leak more files than Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or Dan Bongo Balls?
The bongo box thing takes me out of time. What we're going to see.
Like a 4-year-old retard and like an actual adult human being who just sucks at his job, which is what President Donald Trump is.
Well, like I said, in the coming weeks, you're going to see the resignation, termination, or the release of the files. That's what I said. 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
All right. Austin, I'm curious.
Very good. 2 weeks.
If you're wrong, are you going to donate to Unfuck America Tour?
Yeah, come here. If I'm wrong, and in 2 weeks the files are not released, Bondi's not terminated or resignated, I'll donate $500 to the Unfuck America Tour.